After you finish listening to the story, don't forget to leave a comment about what you would have done in the character's place. Now, let's dive into the story. In the bustling heart of a modern city, where the skyscrapers kissed the clouds and the streets pulsed with life, Stella, a wealthy and influential 46-year-old woman, walked confidently through the crowded plaza. She was impeccably dressed in designer attire, her appearance a reflection of her successful career as a real estate mogul. Her sharp wit and keen business acumen had earned her a reputation as a force to be reckoned with in the industry. Stella thrived on the power she held, relishing in the privileges that came with her wealth. But beneath her polished exterior lay a woman who often struggled with the authenticity of her connections. Friends were plentiful, but genuine relationships were rare. As she walked, she indulged in the laughter of her circle, a group of like-minded individuals who shared her love for luxury and social status. Meanwhile, George, a 50-year-old man with a weary but determined demeanor, made his way through the same plaza, dressed in threadbare clothing that hinted at his financial struggles. He had spent most of his life working odd jobs, barely scraping by while dreaming of better days. The weight of his circumstances hung heavily on his shoulders, but he carried a flicker of hope, a hope that someday his hard work would pay off. On this particular day, George was on his way to an interview for a low-paying position at a small firm. As he approached a small coffee shop, he overheard laughter spilling out onto the street. Intrigued, he paused to peek inside, catching a glimpse of Stella and her affluent friends. The sharp contrast between their laughter and his reality struck him. "Look at that man," Stella chuckled, her voice dripping with disdain as she pointed out George to her friends. "Is he really trying to get a job dressed like that? It's almost comical." The laughter that followed was a cacophony of mockery, and George's heart sank. He felt the heat rise to his cheeks as embarrassment washed over him. Determined not to let their ridicule affect him, George turned away, but fate had other plans. Just as he stepped back onto the sidewalk, he stumbled, bumping directly into Stella, spilling her coffee all over her designer blouse. Time seemed to freeze as her friends gasped, their laughter dying in an instant. "Oh my God!" Stella exclaimed, her eyes narrowing. The shock quickly morphed into anger. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I'm so sorry." George stammered, flustered and panicked. "I didn't mean to." Before he could finish, Stella's husband, Greg, a composed 47-year-old who often played the role of peacemaker, stepped in. "Stella, let's not make a scene," he said, trying to diffuse the tension. But Stella was having none of it. "No, Greg. This man needs to understand the consequences of his actions. Look at him. He's a joke." Her words were sharp, but they struck a chord with George, igniting a fire within him that he had kept buried for far too long. "Maybe you should look in the mirror," George replied, surprising even himself with his audacity. "You think your wealth makes you better than everyone else. Maybe you should try walking in someone else's shoes before you judge." The air crackled with tension. Stella was taken aback, not used to being challenged. Her friends exchanged glances, uncertain how to react. "Who do you think you are?" Stella shot back, her voice laced with disbelief. "You think your ragged clothes give you the right to speak to me like that?" "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to work hard for every penny," George replied, his voice steady. "Not everyone has the luxury of being born into money." Stella's expression shifted, a mixture of anger and something else, curiosity, perhaps. "And what exactly do you do for a living?" "Whatever I can," George admitted, a flicker of pride in his voice. "Today, it's an interview for a job I'm hoping will help me pay the bills." The laughter had faded, replaced by a palpable tension. Stella's friends stood frozen, unsure whether to laugh or scold their friend for her outburst. Greg shifted awkwardly, sensing the weight of the situation. "Listen," Stella said, her tone softer but still edged with condescension. I have places to be. You might want to consider that this world isn't kind to people like you. George felt his heart race, both from the humiliation and the sudden thrill of standing up for himself. And you might want to consider that kindness goes a long way, no matter how much money you have. In that moment, something shifted in Stella. Behind the facade of wealth and confidence, a crack appeared, a glimpse of vulnerability. She wasn't just an untouchable mogul, she was a woman, flawed and seeking something beyond her riches. Maybe you're right, Stella said, her voice quieter, almost contemplative. Maybe I've lost touch with what really matters. With that, George took a step back, both men and women witnessing the unexpected turn of events. He wasn't sure if he had changed anything in Stella, but he had certainly changed the atmosphere around them. As George turned to leave, he felt a sense of triumph. In a world where wealth often overshadowed character, he had made his mark. Little did he know, this encounter would alter the course of both their lives in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. The story would only unfold from here, revealing the complexities of their lives and the unexpected twists of fate that awaited them. The city buzzed with the energy of a late spring evening, its streets alive with laughter and the faint hum of distant music. Stella stood outside a lavish restaurant, her designer dress hugging her curves, her hair perfectly coiffed. She glanced at her watch, impatiently tapping her stiletto heel on the pavement. "Where is Greg?" she muttered, her voice tinged with irritation. Just then, she spotted George, the scruffy man with a tattered jacket and worn-out shoes, standing by the entrance, looking lost. His hair was unkempt, and his face bore the lines of a hard life, but there was something intriguing about him, an intensity in his eyes that contrasted sharply with his appearance. Stella snorted as she watched him. "Can you believe this guy?" she whispered to Greg, who had just arrived. "Who does he think he is coming here looking like that?" Greg, her husband, rolled his eyes, his face a mask of indifference. "Ignore him, Stella. Let's just go inside." But the moment George noticed them, he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but quiet. "Do you have the time?" Stella barely concealed her disdain. "What do you want?" "A pocket watch." She laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the evening air. George's expression faltered, but he stood his ground. "It's just a simple question," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. "No need to be rude." "Rude?" Stella leaned in, her smile condescending. "You're standing outside a fancy restaurant, dressed like you just crawled out of a dumpster. You should be thankful I even acknowledge you." "Stella, stop," Greg interjected, sensing the growing tension. "Let's just go inside." But Stella wasn't finished. "You know, people like you should know their place. This isn't some corner diner," she said, tossing her hair back dismissively. George clenched his jaw, his patience thinning. "You don't know anything about me, lady," he replied, his voice rising slightly. "I've worked harder in a day than you have in your entire life." A flicker of surprise crossed Stella's face. "Oh really? And what do you do?" "Sweep streets for a living." "I'm a mechanic," George shot back, his pride evident. "And I own a small shop that keeps the city's cars running." Greg interjected, a hint of amusement in his tone. "You really think that's something to brag about?" The air crackled with unspoken tension. George's eyes darkened. "Better than pretending to be someone you're not. What are you, a trophy wife playing dress-up?" "Enough!" Stella snapped, her composure faltering. "I'm not here to play games with you. I have more important things to do." "Like what?" "Spending your husband's money." George replied, his words laced with sarcasm. The sharpness of his retort cut deeper than Stella expected. For a brief moment, her facade cracked, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. You don't know anything about me, she said, her voice quieter now. Neither do you know me, George replied, taking a step back, his expression softening. I'm just a guy trying to get by. Just then, a luxury car pulled up, and out stepped a man in an immaculate suit, his demeanor exuding confidence. He walked straight to George, extending a hand. Hey, George. Sorry I'm late, he said with a grin. Let's get going, I've got a few surprises for you tonight. Stella's mouth dropped open, shock etched on her face as she realized the man was not just a random acquaintance. He was a successful entrepreneur known for his booming business in the auto industry, someone she had seen featured in news articles and business magazines. What's going on here? Stella's voice trembled, a mix of confusion and anger. You know him? George, slightly embarrassed, shrugged. Yeah, we've done some work together. He's a good guy. Stella's world tilted. You? A mechanic? And you're friends with him? The entrepreneur smirked, sensing the tension. George here is one of the best in the business. He's been keeping my fleet running for years. I can't believe this, Stella whispered, her arrogance deflating. You're not what you seem. George stood tall, a newfound confidence radiating from him. And neither are you, Stella. Just because you wear fancy clothes doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. With that, George turned to follow the entrepreneur, leaving Stella and Greg stunned in their wake. As they walked inside the restaurant, Stella felt the weight of the evening's events crashing down on her. She glanced at Greg, who was struggling to suppress a smile. You have to admit, that was entertaining, he said. Stella glared at him. You think this is funny? No, but it's a good reminder that not everyone fits neatly into our expectations, he replied, his voice calm. The atmosphere shifted inside the restaurant as they took their seats. Stella sat in silence, her mind racing with thoughts of George and the unexpected twist of fate that had just unfolded. What did it mean for her perceptions of success and worth? Just then, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from a mutual acquaintance, sharing a link to an article titled The Unsung Heroes of the City. Mechanics Who Make a Difference. And there, in the feature photo, was George, standing proudly in front of his shop, a genuine smile lighting up his face. Stella's heart sank. As the restaurant buzzed around her, she found herself caught in a whirlwind of realization, perhaps the world was not as simple as she had believed. And the lines of class and worth were far more blurred than she had ever considered. As they waited for their food, Stella's thoughts lingered on George. She couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was just the beginning of something far more significant than a simple chance meeting. What would happen next? Would she have the courage to confront her biases, or would she remain trapped in a world of privilege, forever blind to the complexities of life beyond her bubble? As she sat there, a newfound determination blossomed within her. Maybe it was time to learn more about the world outside her insulated life, a world where hard work and integrity were just as valuable as wealth and status. The evening was far from over, and Stella felt the stirrings of change within her, a change that would lead her down a path she never expected. As Stella and Greg waited for their meal, the conversations around them faded into a dull murmur. Stella's mind was preoccupied, replaying the encounter with George in vivid detail. She couldn't help but admire the way he stood up for himself, his confidence radiating in stark contrast to her own insecurities. Stella. Greg's voice broke through her thoughts. Are you even listening? Sorry, she replied, shaking her head to clear her mind. I was just thinking about that mechanic. Why? He's just a nobody, Greg said dismissively, waving his hand as if to brush away the entire interaction. No, Greg, that's not it, she insisted. He's not a nobody. He's running his own business and doing something important. I can't believe I didn't see it before. Greg raised an eyebrow. You're seriously not going to start feeling sorry for him, are you? No, it's not about pity, she snapped. It's about recognizing that people like him have stories and struggles we know nothing about. Maybe we should take a moment to appreciate that. Greg sighed, clearly unimpressed. You're starting to sound like one of those charity cases, Stella. We're not responsible for them. But maybe we could be, she countered, her voice firm. What if we actually listened to their stories? What if we learned from them? The conversation dwindled as their food arrived, but Stella couldn't shake the feeling of unrest inside her. She felt compelled to learn more about people like George, those whose lives were filled with grit and determination. Later that night, after returning home, Stella opened her laptop and began researching local mechanics and their stories. She stumbled across various articles highlighting the struggles of small business owners and the importance of community support. As she read, her admiration for George grew. Over the next few days, Stella found herself drawn to the idea of visiting George's shop. The thought both excited and terrified her. What if he didn't want to talk to her? What if he thought she was just another entitled woman looking to satisfy her curiosity? But the more she pondered it, the more convinced she became that she needed to reach out. With a mix of nerves and determination, she drafted a message on social media, introducing herself and expressing her desire to learn more about his business and the challenges he faced. To her surprise, George responded within an hour. Hey Stella, thanks for reaching out. Happy to chat. You can come by the shop anytime. The warmth in his reply sparked a flutter of excitement in Stella's chest. She scheduled a visit for the following Saturday, her heart racing with anticipation. When the day finally arrived, she stood outside George's garage, taking in the worn sign that read George's Auto Repair. The building was small but bustling with activity, cars in various stages of repair, tools scattered about, and the unmistakable scent of oil and metal in the air. As she stepped inside, George looked up from under the hood of a car and wiped his hands on a rag. His expression shifted from surprise to curiosity as he approached her. Stella, I didn't think you'd actually come. Here I am, she replied, a nervous smile spreading across her face. I wanted to see your shop and learn more about what you do. George grinned, a hint of disbelief in his eyes. You really want to learn about mechanics? Most people only care about how much it costs to fix their cars. I want to understand, she said, her tone earnest. There's so much I've taken for granted, and I realize I don't know anything about the hard work that goes into keeping this city running. George regarded her thoughtfully, a mixture of skepticism and appreciation in his gaze. All right, then. Let me show you around. As they toured the shop, George explained the intricacies of car repair, the importance of quality parts, and the challenges of running a small business. Stella listened intently, fascinated by the passion he had for his work. She realized that each car had a story, just like the people who drove them. As they chatted, Stella began to feel more at ease, and a genuine connection formed between them. George opened up about his journey, how he had started the shop with little more than a dream and a few tools, facing countless setbacks along the way. Stella found herself inspired by his resilience, and for the first time, she felt a spark of hope for her own life. She could see how hard work and dedication had led George to create something meaningful, and it ignited a desire within her to pursue her own passions. Maybe we should do something together, Stella suggested, a bold idea taking shape in her mind. What if we organized a community event to raise awareness about local businesses like yours? We could highlight the importance of supporting small shops and share their stories. George looked taken aback but intrigued. You really think that would make a difference? Absolutely. It could help people see the value in what you do and maybe even bring in some new customers, she replied, her enthusiasm infectious. As they discussed the details, Stella felt a sense of purpose growing within her. The encounter that had begun as a superficial meeting had transformed into something profound, a chance to connect with her community and make a real impact. Weeks passed, and Stella worked tirelessly alongside George to plan the event. They reached out to other local businesses, created promotional materials, and organized activities that showcased the talents and services of the shop owners in their community. When the day of the event arrived, the atmosphere was electric. The parking lot was filled with people eager to learn, support, and connect. Stella watched as George, now at the center of attention, spoke passionately about his work and the importance of community. As she stood back, taking it all in, Stella realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. No longer would she be content to hide behind her privilege, she wanted to be a voice for the people who worked hard every day to build their dreams. George caught her eye from the stage, a smile spreading across his face. In that moment, Stella understood that they had both grown. She had discovered a newfound appreciation for hard work, and he had found a way to share his story with the world. As the sun set on the bustling event, Stella knew she was no longer just a spectator in life, she was an active participant, ready. In the weeks that followed the community event, the energy surrounding George's shop remained palpable. People were talking, sharing stories, and the local businesses began to thrive. Stella found herself immersed in this vibrant environment, working alongside George and getting to know the other business owners. With each passing day, Stella felt her old life slipping away, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. The once familiar office walls now felt constricting, and she yearned for the freedom she felt within the community. As her bond with George deepened, she began to explore the possibility of shifting her career path, one that aligned with her values and the connections she had made. One evening, as they cleaned up after a busy day, George turned to Stella, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You've really made a difference around here. I didn't realize how much a fresh perspective could help." "Thanks, George." "But it's not just me," Stella replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We all contributed to this. Your passion inspired me to act." George nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "You know, I've been thinking. With your background in marketing and my experience in the shop, we could start something bigger, like a collective for local businesses. It could help us promote each other and bring in more customers." Stella's heart raced at the idea. "That's brilliant. A cooperative marketing initiative could showcase our strengths and build a supportive network. We could even hold workshops to educate the community about the value of shopping locally." As they brainstormed, the possibilities seemed endless. Together, they envisioned a hub where business owners could collaborate, share resources, and uplift one another. The excitement in the air was contagious, and Stella felt a thrill of anticipation for what lay ahead. In the coming weeks, they worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They reached out to local entrepreneurs, inviting them to join their cooperative. Stella utilized her marketing skills to create branding materials, social media campaigns, and events that showcased the unique stories of each business. As the cooperative took shape, it became clear that they were building more than just a business network, they were fostering a community of support and collaboration. Business owners who once operated in isolation were now coming together, sharing ideas, and celebrating each other's successes. Through this journey, Stella and George grew closer, their connection deepening with each challenge they faced. They spent long hours at the shop, often sharing laughter and stories about their lives. Stella found herself drawn to George's humility and determination, while he admired her creativity and drive. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, they found themselves alone in the shop, the sound of laughter and chatter fading into the background. George leaned against the counter, a soft smile on his face. You know, I never expected to find someone like you in my life. You've changed the way I see my business and my community. Stella felt her cheeks flush at his words. I could say the same about you, George. You've opened my eyes to a world I didn't know existed. I feel more alive than I have in years. He stepped closer, his expression serious yet gentle. I've been thinking about this a lot. I know we started as friends and partners, but I can't ignore the way I feel about you. I really like you, Stella. Her heart raced, the admission hanging in the air like a sweet melody. I like you too, George. I didn't know if I should say anything. I was afraid of ruining what we have. George chuckled softly, a warm light in his eyes. I think we have something worth exploring. We've built something special here, and I'd like to see where it could go. In that moment, the air between them shifted, electric and charged with possibility. They leaned closer, their hearts beating in sync, and shared a tentative yet passionate kiss, a blend of hope and promise. As the weeks turned into months, Stella and George's relationship flourished alongside their cooperative. They became a powerful team, not only in their personal lives but also in their commitment to supporting the community. Their love was rooted in shared values, mutual respect, and a deep appreciation for the hard work that goes into building a life worth living. The cooperative continued to grow, attracting new members and fostering an ever-expanding network of local businesses. They organized seasonal festivals, workshops, and community events that not only highlighted their entrepreneurial spirit but also brought the neighborhood together. Stella thrived in her role, finding fulfillment in connecting with others and championing their stories. George, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose as he worked to ensure his shop remained a cornerstone of the community. One sunny afternoon, while setting up for the summer festival, Stella looked around at the smiling faces, the laughter echoing in the air, and the vibrant colors of the stalls filled with local goods. She felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. George approached her, carrying 2 cups of lemonade. Here, thought you might need this, he said, handing her a cup with a grin. Thanks, she replied, taking a sip and savoring the refreshing taste. I can't believe how far we've come since that first encounter in your shop. He nodded, his gaze turning contemplative. It's amazing what happens when we take a chance on each other, isn't it? Stella smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. It's changed my life. As they stood together, watching the community come alive around them, Stella realized that her journey had only just begun. She was no longer just an observer in her life, she was an active participant, ready to embrace whatever challenges and joys lay ahead, side by side with George. As the summer festival unfolded, the air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the enticing aromas of local food. Stella and George moved through the crowd, greeting friends and neighbors, their hands brushing against each other in shared excitement. Stella felt a sense of pride as she watched the community come together. The cooperative had not only strengthened local businesses but also fostered connections that transcended commerce. People were sharing stories, forming friendships, and discovering the value of supporting one another. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the festivities, George took Stella's hand and led her to a quiet corner of the festival. They found a moment away from the crowd, surrounded by twinkling lights and the soft hum of music in the background. Stella, George said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, I've been thinking about our future. What we've built here is amazing, but I believe we can do even more together. I want to be by your side, not just in business but in life. Stella's heart raced at his words. I feel the same way, George. You've changed my life in ways I never imagined. I want to continue this journey with you. George took a deep breath, his eyes reflecting the warmth of the fading sun. Then let's make it official. Let's build a life together, a partnership that extends beyond work and into every aspect of our lives." Stella smiled, tears of joy welling in her eyes. "Yes, I want that. I want to build a future with you, filled with love, adventure, and purpose." They shared a tender kiss, sealing their commitment to each other and the life they envisioned together. As they pulled away, they saw their friends and neighbors celebrating around them, the joy of the moment amplifying their happiness. Over the next few months, Stella and George worked tirelessly, not only on their cooperative but also on their relationship. They took time to explore new hobbies, enjoy spontaneous adventures, and deepen their bond. Each day brought new discoveries about each other, solidifying their partnership both personally and professionally. One day, as they sat together in the shop, brainstorming ideas for the upcoming holiday season, Stella turned to George, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "What if we organized a holiday market? We could invite all the local businesses to showcase their products and create a festive atmosphere for the community." George grinned, his enthusiasm mirroring hers. "That's a fantastic idea. We could include workshops, live music, and even activities for kids. It would be a great way to bring everyone together for the holidays." With renewed determination, they set to work planning the event. They reached out to local artisans, bakers, and performers, creating an inclusive atmosphere that celebrated the diversity of their community. The excitement around the holiday market grew, drawing in more participants and visitors than they had anticipated. As the day of the market approached, Stella and George worked late into the night, decorating the shop and setting up stalls outside. The energy was electric, and they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. Finally, the day of the holiday market arrived, and the streets were filled with festive cheer. Colorful lights adorned the stalls, and the air was filled with the scents of baked goods and hot cider. Families wandered through the market, laughter ringing in the air as they enjoyed the offerings from local vendors. Stella and George stood side by side, watching the community come alive around them. Their hearts swelled with joy as they saw familiar faces smiling, children laughing, and friends sharing moments together. It was everything they had hoped for and more. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, George turned to Stella, taking her hands in his. "Look at what we've created together. This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Stella nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, it is. I can't wait to see where this journey takes us next." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the community and the love they had built together, Stella knew that they were not just partners in business but in life. They had created a legacy that would continue to grow, not only in their hearts but in the hearts of everyone around them. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, they shared a passionate kiss, embracing the promise of a bright future together. With each day that passed, they knew they would face whatever challenges came their way, hand in hand, united by their shared vision and love for each other and their community. Their journey was just beginning, and with hope and determination, they were ready to embrace all that lay ahead.